So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 94 of the series, and in the previous episode we saw a ton of cool events happening, such as a major war over here in Central Europe. We saw the unification of 3 countries into one of the largest countries in the world over here in the Pacific region, the expansion of some Unitarian countries, and most importantly we saw the Assembly of Nations pass a resolution that would create the Planetary Defense Treaty Organization, or the PDTO for short. But in this episode, we're going to be expanding on some of those things, as well as looking at some other wars and major events. So if you guys do enjoy, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. As always, all of the support is greatly appreciated. Make sure to check out the limited edition 200,000 subscriber merchandise that will be going away after December 31st. Link to that down in the description below. You'll also find a link to the Discord server, as well as channel memberships, which give you early access to each and every one of our videos. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight into this Wixo video. So starting off where we left off with the creation of the PDTO, this is a global alliance, a global military alliance that is created for the sake of defending the planet against any extraterrestrial threat, and more specifically, any threat that was mentioned by the Singularity Testament. Remember back when Fuzon gave the whole briefing to the Assembly of Nations, he mentioned that there was a foreign threat that could come back to Earth and try to retake it. This is the AN's solution to that, the creation of a worldwide organization that is made up of some of the best militaries in the world, and it will be the largest military alliance in history, of course made through the AN itself. So every member state has the choice of either joining it or not joining it, and this is kind of where it's starting to get tricky with the public, because something like this is going to be kind of hard to hide, but they will for now. So still the people of the world are unaware of what could be coming, and more so unaware of this new military alliance. And taking a look at all of the countries that join the PDTO, we can see that there are a ton all across the map with little to no regard to like political affiliation or relations to any other country. We have nations as new as Pacifica joining, and nations as radical as Australia joining. There really is no like pattern, like it's not like all the democratic countries, it's not like, you know, all the countries that are aligned with each other in a certain regard. It's completely random, and it's just a matter of how close the country feels to, you know, wanting to defend the rest of the planet from a possible extraterrestrial threat. So even though that Australia is fascist, they recognize that an external threat that would decimate the entire Earth needs the collaboration of all countries on the planet rather than just a select few, so that is why they join it. And it's a pretty similar case for every single country. So every nation that you see with the white gear, they are a member of the Planetary Defense Treaty Organization. And just because a country isn't in the PDTO doesn't mean that they can't join at a later time. There might have been some domestic issues that either slowed down the process or delayed it. And another important note about this alliance is that it is not a like domestic planetary alliance that defends countries from one another. It is only activated when an external threat comes to Earth, and at only that point will all countries work together to respond. This is the most united Earth has ever been under any circumstance. It's a major accomplishment for this world, but now we're coming down to Central Europe, where we have a war happening. So while everyone is celebrating the creation of the Planetary Organization, Germany wants revenge. And don't worry, I'm talking about this world's Germany, not the real Germany. More so, actually, Germany wants to take out their anger on another country. In the previous episode, of course, we saw that they were invaded by the Dutch and the Romans. They lost a ton of land, but now they're taking it out on one of their neighbors, and honestly, probably one of their allies, as they send troops over into the Red Danzig country and begin their invasion. Now notably, these guys are not a member of any organization other than the Assembly of Nations. But this was a surprise invasion, so there really wasn't much that the AN could do to slow it down or stop it. Nonetheless though, Germany will completely occupy all of the red team. And in the peace treaty, we have Danzig being completely annexed by Germany, so they get back a little bit of land, but some countries around them are not so happy that they have just done this, more specifically Poland, who shared pretty friendly relations with the red team, but they're gone now, and there's nothing much that they can do to bring them back without starting a major war. So now moving on down to the continent of South America, we have some alliance changes occurring here. And to be more specific, we finally see the red communist Argentine country / Chilean country join in on the South American Economic Alliance. Now every single country here is involved in said alliance. Remember, it took them a very long time to convert their economy to be compatible with the rest of South America, since they are a communist nation. All the other countries are capitalist democracies, or more so probably like socialist-ish economies. I often find myself imagining that the Wixo world is pretty left-leaning on the economic scale compared to what it is in real life, which is pretty far right-leaning. Well, not far right, but right-leaning definitely. And that's because, remember, the world world is at a stage now where like human lives are actually being prioritized by the governments, and like human life development and quality of life is very high. So when I say things like that, socialism kind of comes to mind, where the government is providing all these services for their people, and that's kind of what I imagine here in this world. But still, communism would be the extreme left version of that, and then socialism still, it's left-leaning ideology. But they finally make it work, and they join in on South America's economic alliance. On top of that, though, we also have two major changes to the military alliance, as the brown team joins in on it, and so does the nation of Brazil. Yes, the military alliance was created to deter Brazil and to keep it in check, but Brazil has found themselves in that very alliance. So what we're getting from this actually is that all of South America is now united in a sovereign state, but economically and militarily it is one country. Don't take that too literally, because obviously it's not, but in a sense it kind of is. This is the most united continent in the world now, and it's kind of crazy how far it's come from being divided between communism and fascism, to having a lot of involvement in multiple world wars, World War IV and World War V, and to mellowing out into one of the most peaceful continents with really no violence or anything like that, other than well, not violence, but some spite towards Brazil because of the past and the history. A lot of the people in these countries down here still aren't too favorable of Brazil. Same goes for these guys over here. But the governments are working together. They're collaborating together. These are completely new governments that have no connection to the historic governments. So that is why this collaboration effort is actually possible. But now moving straight on over across the Atlantic Ocean to Africa, we are once again going to be talking about African Unitaria. And that's because they are going to be adding yet another country into their Unitarian Union. And that country is none other than the yellow team. I've said this before and I'll say it again. A lot of the countries in South Africa are very interested in Unitarianism and have expressed interest in joining this union. The yellow team is the most recent, and before that it was the dark purple team. I believe that's what their color was. The only countries that really aren't interested in this thing are Tanzania and to an extent the red team. South Africa, one of the stronger countries in the world, they're interested. A former Security Council member, they are having some interest and some talks about joining this thing. Pink team as well, although there are some differences there they still need to work out, but they're very close to figuring that out and getting it done. And the lavender country up here is most likely to join next. But for now, African Unitarian will expand once more, and you can see how it's slowly but surely becoming one of the largest countries in the world. Now, unfortunately for them, Pacifica did snatch that title last episode. And also, I do want to say that the color that I saw the most likes for, comment-wise, was lavender, so I went with this. I also saw some comments saying orange and yellow. I don't think orange looks too good. It kind of just really sticks out in a bad way, so we're not going to go with orange. And I could see yellow, but kind of similar to orange, it kind of sticks out way too much. And even if we go lighter, it still is like a sore thumb. I think that the lavender color is overall the best color possible. I know there's a ton of blue over here, but it doesn't stick out too much. This is a very large country, and maybe it should stick out a little bit, but not as much as how it looks with orange or yellow. But we're just going to stick with this. Let me know how you guys think about that down below. But yeah, Africa Unitaria, very large. It's very interesting if we take a quick peek at the religion/ethnicity map of South Africa. You can see that the purple ethnicity is almost completely gone. Not gone, but more so assimilated into Unitarianism. But South Africa is one of the only purple countries remaining, as well as parts of the pink team over here. Those parts of this country are the ones that are mostly driving the desire to join in on Africa Unitaria. Now moving on over to Central Asia though, we have another war occurring here, and this one is between the orange team and the teal team, two countries that have recently been involved in war. But this one is simply just about the expansion of the orange team, so they send troops straight on over into the teal team. Once again, another surprise invasion. The assembly couldn't do much to slow this one down either, and that's because, of course, they didn't know this was happening until there was boots on the ground over here. But the orange team's military has been built up a substantial amount recently, and this is mostly because the leader desires to expand the territory of the orange team. So that's why we see this happening here. Their troops will quickly move up, capture this city over here on the coast of the Caspian Sea, while a specialized division will be sent straight towards the capital city, disconnecting it from other large areas of the country. Over here, we'll see orange team troops also move up, going towards this city up here, and really the blue team just kind of fails to push back completely. Surprise invasions, usually they go pretty well for the one that is attacking, but in some cases they can't go well. Usually that only occurs though when you're attacking a country that is way stronger than you. However, at this point the orange team is way stronger than the teal team. That's why we see so much dominance here. Although we do see the teal team push back in some very small ways, they are able to liberate almost the entirety of this coastal area, but as the second wave of invaders come, they will fall short in their goal goals of pushing back the Orange team completely. They lose another major city up in the north, and now the Orange team is right back outside of their capital city, and soon after, they'll go ahead and take it. A few weeks will go on as the Teal team continues to fight for its existence. However, those attempts at existing are futile, as the Orange team will eventually completely occupy the country, and we can go ahead and take a look at a peace treaty between the Orange team and the Teal team. And in this peace treaty here, we'll see that the Orange team annexes pretty much all of the Teal team, or more so a majority of the westernmost parts. They do leave them to exist, although in a very small state. The Orange team probably could have annexed all this land, but they decided to be nice and let them exist. Anyway, though, the Orange team now gets more Caspian coast and they become a lot stronger, but notably they also now share a border, or more so a larger border, with the Pink team. And you guys can probably imagine that the Pink team isn't too happy about the expansion and all the wars that have happened down here, but also remember that the Pink team and the Orange team have collaborated before to take out a country that used to be right around here, the communist purple country. And also, on the topic of that, these areas are still very violent. These governments are doing their best to control these guys and to make sure that there isn't any more violent outbursts by anybody. But it's still pretty bad, so they're going to have to do a lot more assimilating as well as receive a lot more help from the other AN countries. But it's definitely better than it used to be. Now we shift our focus right down south of this region to the Mesopotamian countries, and it's for a very, very important reason, but also a very suspicious reason. Palestine will be uniting with the Red team. This event is kind of out of nowhere. The AN, as well as any countries that surround these guys, they didn't foresee it happening. They thought that Palestine was now its own thing, but no, they decided to reunite with the Red team. And as you guys have probably started to notice, Mesopotamia has slowly but surely become more and more united. In the Anatolia, there's only 2 countries here now. All of the countries that may have previously existed in this red country are now all a part of one under these guys. These 2 countries even united. So yeah, there's less and less countries here, and the world is watching Mesopotamia, and they're like kind of observing what is happening here. This very slow but very sure buildup of unity in Mesopotamia. And remember, the peace treaty of World War IV says that the old empire, aka the unification of the Red team and the Blue team, is forbidden. That cannot happen. It doesn't prevent other countries from joining those 2 countries, so the Pink team could even unite with the Blue team, although they have a little bit of a rivalry with a certain war that happened a couple decades ago. But, you know, they're still very friendly with each other. They're both Mesopotamians. They recognize each other as Mesopotamian brothers at the end of the day. But the world is watching this region because there is a sense amongst the citizens here that the Grand Empire could return. Social media, for example, their version of it, probably way more advanced than our version, there's like talks of bringing back the old Grand Empire, the old Empire, the Grand Empire, whatever you want to call it. It comes under very many names. So the citizens are putting it into motion, but the governments are going to reinstate the fact that they cannot make that happen, because if that did happen, a worldwide coalition would form against them. Power is not allowed to be centralized in Mesopotamia because it could very easily be exploited, and this country could very easily do a lot of damage to all of the other countries around it if it united. But that doesn't mean that there aren't politicians that are working together between these 2 countries that aren't trying to find a workaround. Small portions of each government are secretly behind the scenes trying to find a workaround that wouldn't get the whole world involved. It's very secret, and the main governments know about that, and they want to make sure that these groups keep it extraordinarily secret. If word got out, well, that coalition could form a lot earlier than they wanted to. But for now, they once again reinstate that they have no intention of doing that, and they continue to carry on with their lives. We will now, however, head on over here to Europe, and that's because we see yet another Unitarian country expand. This time, Iberia Unitaria will be adding another member, and that member is the Dark Purple team, aka Catalonia. Now, this is also extremely surprising considering the fact that this country has come in and out of existence constantly. But here it decides to not necessarily give up its existence, but to give up its sovereignty in order to live on with these other 2 countries under the more perfect society. This is once again very surprising to a lot of the European countries who thought that maybe this newer country would want to exist for a little bit, but no, they want to join the Unitarians. People very largely support it, and so does the government, and thus they make it happen. Of course, these guys will be colored in the Unitarian ethnicity / religion, which actually isn't much of an ethnicity or a religion, more so of a societal standing. But yeah, the ethnicity map in this video has become very, very interesting, especially down here in Africa, but also now over here in Europe, we see this estranged community down here in the south of France that maybe might want to join the Unitarians. Now though, taking a break from unity and taking a break from countries coming together, we're heading down here to the southeastern portion of the map where we have a major regional conflict occurring. Australia is once again going to expand their borders, but this time it comes with a severe consequence as troops start to occupy Filipino islands. Now, as we probably should remember, the Philippines are in a military alliance with the likes of Vietnam, and also South China. South China has grown to become one of the stronger countries in the world, without a doubt a top 20 power, even a top 15 power. They have also in many ways surpassed North China, or just normal China. I don't think I've ever called these guys North China before, but I guess that also kind of puts it into perspective how much stronger this country is, or has become, in comparison to their former ruler. But with Australian troops impeding on Filipino territory, that alliance will be activated, and Vietnam and South China will both come to the aid of their ally. Now, the response isn't going to necessarily be right away, and the Philippines will lose a majority of their territory. In fact, they begin to question their actual alliance, because when are you guys going to get here? And right before they lose all hope, their allies come to the rescue, and they immediately begin to push back Red Australia. The Australian military has not been humiliated before, but it's kind of happening here. Their own territory even begins to be invaded by the Trapezoid Alliance, and soon enough, they almost completely lose their foothold in the Philippine Islands, a very embarrassing loss for them. But they will begin to send in reinforcements up north, but not before crossing over into Indonesia Unitarian waters, violating said waters, and also getting into a naval skirmish with them, which inadvertently brings Indonesia into the war. And since Indonesia was attacked, that also brings the other Unitarians into the war. So yeah, the Unitarians join the war. It's the Star Alliance and the Trapezoid Alliance versus Red Australia. Not a good matchup for them. But most importantly to note here, this is the first time that we've ever seen the Unitarian military alliance be used. These countries have pretty much never, ever used their militaries other than the Iberian one, and also technically the failed one in Central Asia, but that doesn't really count. They never joined the alliance. They were never a core Unitarian country, but like Canada, Japan, Indonesia, South Africa, those countries, they don't use their militaries, but this is the first time they're ever going to be doing that. And if I'm not wrong, I think it's the second time that Canada has ever used their military. I think the first time was in the Civil War that happened over here, and I don't even know if they directly used their military. I don't exactly remember. It might have been indirect involvement where they had like a rebellious group fighting, and if that was the case, which I'm starting to think that it was, then that means that this is Canada's first ever war. The Unitarian militaries, they're not notoriously strong or anything like that. In fact, they're pretty average, a little bit above average because of their economies and stuff like that. But fighting isn't really like a societal standard of the Unitarians. You know, they're anti-war. However, they find themselves in a war with one of the stronger countries in the world. But it isn't a matter of being at war. It's more so of a matter of protecting the other Unitarian countries. They are one society. They recognize each other as one society, separated by different borders, different geographical landscapes and stuff like that. We're Unitarians here, but you guys are also Unitarians, and so are the Japanese. It's one society under different countries, and thus it is of utmost importance that we withhold that society that we have worked so hard to maintain and keep. Indonesia Unitaria will for the first time ever deploy their military and begin to smoke Australia. That is in large part thanks to the fact that a majority of the Australian invasion forces are now up here in the southern Philippines. They were sent here to push back against the counteroffensive. They do go ahead and secure the entirety of this southern island, but immediately they're withdrawn once again to protect against this upcoming force, which has already made its way into Papua New Guinea. Now, Australia doesn't have any allies, which kind of sucks for them. There isn't a single soul in this world that wants to help them out, so they're going to have to use their own military, and finally they will be able to deploy it over here and halt the expansion of the Unitarians. But they also know that as time goes on, more and more troops will flood into this country, and the chances of them losing go drastically up. Right now, the armies of Japan and South Africa are more likely than not reaching Indonesia, but soon after we could see the militaries of Canada and Iberia joined over there, and these are the two stronger militaries in the alliance. This is kind of random, but if we were to do military rankings for the Unitarian alliance, the strongest country in that alliance is actually Iberia, followed by Canada, followed by South Africa, then Indonesia, then Japan. So yeah, even though that Iberia is one of the smallest, it's also the strongest. What does that tell us? Size doesn't matter. Anyway, back over in the Philippines, the pink team will once again send troops down with the help of their allies, and Australia is now completely kicked out of the Philippines. That was not their goal. Their goal was to take over all of the Philippines, but now they have no Philippines, so yeah, losers. Did I mention that the armies of South China and Vietnam are also helping out Indonesia? These guys are all relatively friendly with each other, so the Indonesians have really no issue with allowing for these guys' armies to move through their territory. And the effort to protect the Philippines is now turning into an effort to destroy Australia. Maybe not completely destroy them, but definitely push back their influence and push back their borders. But now with the militaries of Canada and Iberia here, Red Australia's military is in shambles. This is the first time that Australia has ever faced an invading force that is much stronger than itself. So, there will be little to no counter invasions by Australia. And by little, I mean like one, and it takes back like a little bit of the central area, but not for long, as the combined coalition of the defenders will just blitz right through the rest of Papua New Guinea. Then I reach all the way over here to the easternmost areas of this island. The Australian land force is split off into two pieces, and not long after are they required to retreat back to the main continent. So Australia will lose all of their ground in the island of New Guinea, and the blue team will also begin to invade some islands over here off the coast. It's a pretty bad beatdown of Australia. And now, though, we reach a very interesting point. While the combined military of all of these countries might be very strong and stronger than Australia, it's not enough to navally invade Australia. That is, without a doubt, out of the question. If you do that, you are going to be wasting so many resources, so many lives, it's just not worth it in the end. The main point of this war was to protect the Philippines and also to protect Indonesia. That has very easily been fulfilled. Invading Australia just seems like a little bit too excessive. So they will offer the Australian government an opportunity to sit down and discuss peace negotiations, and very surprisingly, Australia will accept. The fascist government here knows that they want land, they know they want to expand their territory, they also know that their empire is very fragile. This is not a very free country. In fact, it's very suppressed, very restrictive on what you can do. And if you push the buttons of the civilians a little bit too much, they tend to rebel. You can ask pretty much any of the countries in the world that used to have a radical ideology, like Brazil, definitely will tell you that, hey, maybe sit this one out. You don't want to fall apart, do you? Remember that Australia is made up of many countries. This wasn't always just one country. More recently, it was two, the red team and the blue team, but before that, there were a ton of countries here. So, they will now meet over here in India to discuss a peace treaty, and let's go ahead and take a look at said treaty. And in this treaty here, we see a couple of things happening. First of all, starting in the Philippines, they will now completely annex all of the Philippine islands, so this country is actually pretty much a mirror of the real-life Philippines at this point. Not intentional, but that is just the outcome of this peace treaty. Also, pretty similar to real life, Indonesia is looking a lot like Indonesia. They just don't have their half of Papua New Guinea, and that's because the yellow team has been brought back at this point. This country was annexed by Red Australia, however, in the peace treaty, they were forced to spit them out, now leaving the Australian Empire just to a few islands outside of the main continent, and of course New Zealand as well as a little chunk down here in the south of this island. But yeah, their reach is heavily reduced. They used to be all the way up here. Now they are just north, like in this area. Actually, it might be the Solomon Islands. But yeah, very small. They're not so happy about that, but they do retain their country, and the government does retain their authority. No major upbringings, no major rebellions or revolutions, anything like that. They hold on, and the people are just kind of mad. But you can like beat them with batons and stuff and spray tear gas into their eye to make them go away. So they're going to probably do that. Oh, and also these guys will join the Assembly of Nations. Now, whenever a country is created or comes back, they automatically join the AN because it's a pretty essential part of this world now. Like if a country wasn't in the AN, it would be very weird. But now though, we come over here to Canada, where we have yet another Unitarian expansion. This time, the country of New England or New York or whatever you want to call it will be uniting with Canada. Now, like many other of the Unitarian unions, this is very surprising to the world. New York or New England has been independent for a very long time, ever since they got independence from the Dutch team hundreds of years ago. And they've also coexisted with the Unitarians in a way that made a lot of countries think that they had no interest in joining, but that isn't necessarily the case. As you can see, they've joined. And now America is a little bit more scared of the countries that surround them. A few episodes ago, they were the big bad country, the strongest country in the world. Now though, there are two countries that are right on their border that are both larger than them. And, well, if they work together, they could definitely take them down. I was going to say stronger, but that is definitely not the case. So 3 Unitarian expansions, technically 4 Unitarian expansions, have happened in this episode. The ideology / societal function, whatever you want to call it, is very rapidly gaining popularity. More and more people are wanting it, and there is a good percentage of people in the world that believe that their country should be under this new ideology. There is a percentage that exists of people in the world, and then this is an actual percentage, like over 1%, that want the whole world united under Unitarianism. They believe that it can actually happen and it can actually work. Now, Right now, that is a very bizarre and honestly impossible idea. You cannot unite the whole world under one country because it's so diverse and so many different countries want their own independence. Like South America, for example, these are all of these sovereign nations down here. They call themselves the sovereigners because they want to remain separate as their own thing, just in a collaborative effort with the other countries around them. There's also countries that you just simply couldn't unite together. It just wouldn't work. Greece does not want to be in the same union as Mesopotamia, just as Mesopotamia doesn't want to be in the same union as the Green Team. Yes, they're catching strays even hundreds, if not thousands of years later. Actually, yeah, definitely thousands of years later. This rivalry is ancient. First episode ancient. But yeah, that idea is very, 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 very unordinary, and countries just don't recognize it as a possibility. Like, it's 1% of people that wish that. That's a very small percentage, but still in the grand population of this world, which is probably well over 10 billion now, probably well over 15 billion now, that is a substantial amount of people. In fact, that is 150 million. A lot of people. But for our final event of this episode, now coming over here to China, we have a unification between them and a country that just recently broke away from them. In World War V, China was forced to spit out both of these countries over here, and that wasn't for a reason of wanting to give these guys independence, like they didn't want to be separated or anything. It's just more so they wanted to weaken China. And sure, there are some issues that have persisted with China in these regions, like they might have exploited this region and they kind of left it behind, in the sense that these countries are very rural compared to the other more city and urban population over here, where the Chinese government actually exists and does a lot of their business. So that was like the justification for giving these two countries independence, but it wasn't necessarily a great idea, and not really a great idea at all for this country, who is ranking very, very poorly in world economy, one of the worst in the world, and in terms of development of the population, also pretty down the drain. So the country here will go to China, and they're going to be like, hey, can you annex us? And China's like, no, because of the peace treaty. And then they're like, okay, maybe let's ask the AN. So the Green Team will bring it before the AN, and the Assembly's like, interesting. But since we are desiring to improve the world and improve quality of life, we will allow this to happen. So they changed the peace treaty to allow for the Green Team to once again become part of China. It's a peaceful annexation, and a majority of the people here are happy that it happens, and the government here is very, very quickly disintegrated. Yeah, they didn't really do a good job, and the people are just happy to be a part of the mainland once again. But yeah, China will now peacefully expand their borders, and a lot more people are happy. Anyway, though, that is going to do it for today's episode on What If Civilization Started Over. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Just a quick announcement real quick, there will not be a Wixo video next weekend. I will be going home for winter break, and therefore I don't have a lot of time to plan it out, because that video will have some cinematic aspects to it. And on that topic, don't go anywhere, because after the screen fades to black, you will see a very important lore cutscene. And I honestly don't want any of you to miss it, but I know that not everyone's going to watch it, and they might be a little bit confused in the next episode, or not actually, because I'm going to set it up in a way that it isn't confusing. Anyway, don't go anywhere is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I will be taking a slight break from Wixo next week, just so I can take all my stuff home and not have to worry about working on the cinematic as well as the episode at the same time. I'm working on finals in college right now, so there's a lot of stuff happening next week, and I don't really have the time to produce that episode as I want to. I think there still will be a video on Saturday. It will just not be a Wixo video. But if you guys want to show some further support, also check out the limited edition 200,000 subscriber merchandise. Link to that down in the description. Down there, you'll also find a link to the Discord server, which has a very cool mock government happening there with its own elections and just a ton of cool things with that. So I highly suggest you check that out as well. And also check out the channel memberships to get early access to each and every single one of our videos, including Wixo videos, so you can see these videos a whole day early if you're a member. Pretty cool deal. Most of the members like it because of that. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode.
New system detected in the Milky Way. A group of 5 must have been hiding it. Unknown system. Impossible. That entire galaxy has been charted. No, it can't be. Earth? After all of these millenniums? God has finally returned to us.
And of course, thank you to all our super
This
fans.
includes Augusto Mapping,
Becky,
Vista Maps,
Omega the YouTuber,
the official
GTG
GeoMapper,
on YT,
Kingdom of the
Other
Acheron,
Coda,
Shifty
Andrew
Mapping,
02,
Not CBB
H3
Junior,
CJ,
Augusto,
5W,
Opie the Bopi,
Brad is
totally my
Terminator,
name,
Xander
Country
Pro
Wham,
2023,
Jesse Gerboa,
Green France,
Nevada Garbage
and
Trucks,
Golden Ball Mapping,
Australian Geo
A
Guy,
Norwegian,
Zaylance,
DJ Big
Laser
Goose,
Taze Mapping,
Pablo Sigma
and
Cat,
Hammer Toad 45. Once again, thank you guys.